right, everyone, welcome to the first Community Innovators session of what we hope will become a long series. I might as well sit down, I have a chair. My name is Nathan Klassen. I am the chair of the board for Innovate Cochrane. It is a newly formed nonprofit in our community. Okay, I'll just keep talking. And we are very excited to be in the community. We were just before we turned the mics on, we were talking about a book by a gentleman named Simon Sinek called Start With Why, or The Golden Circles. Start with your why, then your how, then your what. It's a great, it's on YouTube, you can find it. But a lot of what that is about is what's been driving us to clarify for ourselves. That's okay. What is our why? Why do we exist? What value can Innovate Cochrane bring to our community? The word innovation or innovate, like on the sign, there's probably almost 60 people here, which is amazing. There's probably almost 60 definitions for innovation in this room, what that means to each person. And so part of what you'll see tonight is an opportunity for us to share a little bit of what innovation means to us, and also spotlight another person in our community that is doing business innovatively. And that'll be some value that each of you will take away from tonight as well. So we'll start by opening up the floor to Julia, who is the owner of Found, who is hosting us this evening. Julia has a few comments that she wants to make. So come on up.
So I wanted to thank everybody for coming tonight. My name is Julia Lechman. I'm the owner of the space that you are currently in. I'm just going to go through a little bit of housekeeping, and then since I've got you trapped in your seats, just share a little bit about the space, just in case this is your first time in. So first of all, exits, there's one through the door that's open at the back, and then one through the one that you came through in the front. Washrooms, there is only one, and it's in the middle of the blue wall just past the bar there, so time yourself well on that, so apologies there. The bar will be closed once I'm done speaking.
Pretty much now. Yeah.
Now. Until around 8:30ish when we open up the floor again, right? Okay. If everybody wouldn't mind just collectively taking a look at their cell phones and making sure that those are silenced or off, and or both. Yeah, it's a little bit about us. So you are in the bookstore called Found. We've been part of the Cochrane business community for about 5-6 years, but in very different capacities. And we have slowly morphed /quickly morphed into what you see today as a bookstore. And although we are a bookstore and we've been in this space for about 9 months, the purpose and the design, and if you're ever looking for somebody to help you with your contracting, are you listening? Align Development was amazing with making this space turn into exactly what I was picturing in my head and more, with very little to go by besides whatever you think is best. So the space was designed so that people could connect. We use books as the way to pay our bills, but the thing that makes us tick in here is seeing people coming in, having a coffee, just sitting and connecting with each other, and through the events that we have in this space, we are over the moon with what's able to happen with the connections that happen in this space. So even if you are not a book reader, or if you're more of an audiobook person, you are always welcome in here, so please don't be shy, come back. So part of our 2023 initiatives is to host a music concert once a month and spanning genres and cultures. Our next concert is this Saturday, and we are very pleased to be hosting a Cree singer-songwriter. Her name is Donita Large, and her musical duo partner for this night is Anthony King. And he is the lead guitarist for Buffy St. Marie, and is arguably one of the best guitarists that I think I've ever had the pleasure of seeing and hearing. Our website, if you ever want to know what's coming up or going on, is a great space to keep up to date. And we are very, very pleased to be hosting tonight's event. And thank you, Nathan, very much for entrusting us with the pilot project, or the, how did you word it?
Well, we'll see how it goes, and then we'll title it after.
The very first experiment of hopefully many. yeah, so thank you for coming tonight, and hope you are comfortable and that you enjoy the night. I sadly have to leave because I promised a child I would come to not a football game, but a basketball game. I'm really sad to be missing it, but thank you very much for being here. And also, we have a Lost London Fog at the bar.
That's for Sophia.
Oh, okay, that's for Sophia.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, enjoy the night.
Thank you, Julia. Okay. All right, so you have a little bit of detail around this place. I fully expect as this series unfolds, in watching different businesses in our community and watching different businesses and organizations, even nonprofits and others, come through the last 2 to 3 years, call it, of our collective story, everybody's story, but our Cochrane story. What Julia just mentioned in brief, I think that's also a story that I envision may end up in this chair, because every business, every organization has had to find ways to be creative, to get through and not just survive, although that's largely what we've tried to do at minimum, but thrive and grow. And so that's partly why this space felt appropriate for our first experiment of this series as well. So more to come regarding Found, I expect. We're going to do a land acknowledgement, and then we'll jump into some introductions and some other content. But it is important, from my perspective, to recognize innovation is often a forward-looking thing, but part of innovation is being aware of and informed by where we've come from and where we are now, and then that informs where we're going. So in the spirit of that, I'm going to read, with my reading glasses on, a land acknowledgement that I found in a local business recently, actually the corner co-working space, and that'll be part of our introductions here shortly. Cochrane, Alberta is situated on Treaty 7 territory. The traditional lands of the Blackfoot Nations, including Siksika, Piikani, and Kainai bands, and the Tsuut'ina Nation and Stoney Nakoda First Nations. We acknowledge the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit whose footsteps have marked these lands for centuries, and that we all exist here together now, and we're writing a common story. Land acknowledgements are often found if you Google them, but I think it's important for each of us to have our own acknowledgement, whatever that looks like and sounds like. So that's what that one sounds like tonight. All right. We have Innovate Cochrane here on the front of the room. As an organization, we're new. We just founded ourselves last year, and we're just kind of getting our feet underneath us. But we have 3 pillars of our purpose statement. One is education, so innovation capacity building within each of us, within organizations. Connections, strategic connections, so connecting people and resources, needs and resources. And sometimes multiple needs, if you just connect multiple needs, they become the resources to each other. And we have a number of examples of that already in the short time that we've been in existence in the community. So I'm going to do a little 5-minute innovation capacity building segment to help set the stage and provide a little bit of context for what Reid and I are going to talk about here shortly. The other piece, like I said, is the strategic connections. And the third pillar, what am I missing? Storytelling and just spotlighting. Thank you. Which is kind of the reason why we're here tonight. So I'm not sure why that third pillar didn't actually come to me quickly. Sorry, Reid. Yeah. All right, so the little piece that I wanted to do on innovation capacity building, like I said, all of us have a different idea of what innovation is. I think and speak in pictures at times to help me internalize and get a hold of insights. So the picture that came to me the other day is actually a gardening image. How many of you garden or cultivate? Okay. I should say too, part of my background when I'm not volunteering with Innovate Cochrane, I'm actually with CP Rail. That's part of my day job, call it. And I'm actually a senior manager of innovation programs at CP Rail. So I've lived both in a volunteer capacity in the community. What does community innovation look like? I also have my fingers in what does corporate innovation look like. But for many years, I've been a deeply committed person around the topic of what is inner innovation, what does personal innovation look like? And so that's where I want to start, because personal innovation actually then spills out into corporate or organizational innovation, and then community innovation as well. So here's 3 pillars again, 3 ideas to start to connect the dots for yourself on your own definition of innovation. So in the gardening analogy, there are seeds and there are weeds, and then there is the act of tilling the soil, of cultivating the soil. So when I think of innovation, I think of seeds like my list right here. All right, this will be really quick. Seeds. So when you think of the word innovation, how many of you think about humility? One of the weeds that I've seen choke out innovation is ego, or the predisposition that says, I have a lot of experience. That person is younger than me. They don't have as much experience as I do. Pretty sure my ideas are better than theirs. That's a weed that will choke out opportunity for you personally and for your organization, in my own experience. So those are offsetting seeds and weeds. Curiosity is an important one. The whole creating the capacity. How many of you work out, go to the gym in any form, exercise, walking, doesn't matter? All right. If you spend time, if you go to the gym one time and your commitment is to be stronger physically, going to the gym one time likely won't do much in the way of measured strength increase. But if you keep going, and if you apply yourself, eventually you get stronger. Technique is important, but you will get stronger. These are things that if you treat them like the gym, if you cultivate curiosity, if you actively put yourself in places asking questions like, I wonder what would happen if we invited 60 people to the bookstore on a Tuesday night. What could happen? We're going to find out. There's some curiosity behind that. There's also some courage behind that, because you often have to be willing to stick your neck out a little bit and try things that might not be comfortable. And discomfort is not something that we kind of wholeheartedly run to as a primary trait in our society, I find. Discomfort is something we're often trying to avoid. I find discomfort can be a great compass combined with curiosity and humility to unlock things that we do not even know are possible. And again, so those are a few of the seeds. So I'm going to leave it there. The cultivating is the practicing in small doses and just small actions and small commitments. I'm actually going to be doing a series, probably social media or other platform based, around these ideas, and so we'll see more of that going out on our platforms. But I just wanted to set the stage with some of that idea, because often the new ideas is what challenges our current thinking and our posture. And so I encourage each of you, and it's actually no accident then that we're in a bookstore, because there's a lot of knowledge outside of the little circle of knowledge that each of us possesses. And I encourage each of us to cultivate that kind of posture in our own personal lives. Okay, that's enough on listening to me talk. Reid has a lot of insight that we want to unlock this evening as well. So let's transition to what I expect is going to be a very great conversation. I'm going to give a brief introduction to Reid, and Reid is able to then expound on that and tell even more about yourself. The reason that I chose Reid as the first in this series of community innovators is actually it came to me when I was serving as an interim executive director for one of the nonprofits in our community during COVID. So for 6 months I was executive director of the Pregnancy Care Center here in the community. And in that role, I stepped out of my corporate professional management hat and I put on the hat of a small organization that was very different in its DNA than the corporate railway that I work for in my day job now. But in many ways, it's not that different. It's people that are all trying to achieve a common goal based on a common set of values that they all work under. What I found, though, when I came across Reid and 2 Pharmacy, is that they were a business that integrated social impact right into the DNA of their business model, not just, and it's not a lesser than comment, but not just having a donation line item, saying at the end of the year we need to give some money away. Anything that's social impact is impact. Excuse me, but what I found with 2 Pharmacy was they had it right in the business model. Now globally, how many of you are familiar with B corporations or B Corps? Okay, B Corps are essentially small to medium to publicly traded large corporations that literally build social and sustainability and other values like that right into the governance, that they're actually legally obligated to do those things. They build it into their corporation governance. That's basically what I've seen 2 Pharmacy do here in our community at a small enterprise level or medium size. So I started to chat with Reid, and I was super curious on why would they do that? Why would they make that a priority? And that's a bet that companies make if they choose to go that route. And what's the benefit? So that's what we're going to unlock a little bit of tonight. We'll get into a little bit of the mechanics of how 2 Pharmacy has actually done that. And then we'll open it up for some Q&A from you folks as well. So now I'm going to pivot so that I'm actually looking at Reid. And we have some questions that Reid and I discussed. This is just a jumping off point, and then we'll open up the floor as well for some questions. So Reid, I would like to start with just a little bit about yourself and how you ended up in this co-owner status of 2 Pharmacy.
So I was born in Cochrane, born and raised here. In 1989, my parents bought, really 2 pharmacies, both located about like 300 meters from here in either direction. And they merged them into one. And so I guess technically speaking, I've been working in the pharmacy since I was 2 years old when they bought those stores. In an official capacity, I came back and started working at the pharmacy in 2012. What sort of predated me getting into healthcare and kind of giving and all of this was when I was in my 3rd year of my Bachelor of Commerce degree at U of C. My sister passed away in a car accident while she was going to med school, and kind of up until that point in my life, I kind of thought I maybe had a bit of a shallow point of view, and I thought I want to go finish my degree, I want to work for an oil company, I want to make a lot of money, and that's going to be my fulfilled, happy life. And in a moment, when we received the call that Lindsay passed away, I realized there's probably something more for me. There's probably a greater purpose for me. I come from a very medical family. Like I said, Lindsay was in med school. My dad's a pharmacist. My mom's a nurse. We kind of get into extended family. We often run into healthcare the further you go to. And I sort of realized that maybe my purpose was to take what I'm good at, what I understand, which I like to think is business, and applying that to what my family's familiar with and what we do, which is hopefully caring for others and providing care as we can.
Mm-hmm. So I'm curious about you mentioned you came through a traditional commerce background and training, and you had aspirations of more traditional business. How did the 2 hearts, the dual mandate piece kind of evolve at 2 Pharmacy?
I first pitched Ian and my dad. So Ian Kruger is my business partner now, and prior to me coming, the partnership was Ian and my dad, Kelly Kimmett. I first pitched them on the idea for 2 Pharmacy in 2013, so I'd been there for a year. And for me, it kind of came through like a few influences. I think we all have like favorite podcasts we listen to, or favorite books that we rely on, or favorite quotes that kind of are our mantras, that kind of thing. At the time, I was wearing a lot of Tom's shoes. I would wear Tom's shoes continually, regardless of what the event, occasion, level of formality was. And once I bought a pair of Tom's shoes and a book came, I'm drawing a blank because it's been a while since I've even read it, but I think it's called Start Something That Matters, and it just came free with the pair of shoes. It was written by Blake Mycoskie, the founder of Tom's, and it kind of told their story, and then it also kind of laid a roadmap out for how you can create a business that, I don't know, it's kind of in vogue now, like a triple bottom line business where it's for people, profit, and the planet, that kind of thing. So yeah, I read that, and I thought, you know what, I want to make this pitch to Ian and Kelly about putting giving at the core of our business, which, to rewind, has always been at the core of the business. My dad kind of always had a MO that any request that would come to them, he'd say yes in some capacity. So we've always done that. It's just a way of now formalizing that and putting that into our name, into our kind of mission, into our slogans, that kind of thing. Really putting that at the core of what we're doing. So yeah, started then, and then it took 4 more years until I got the yes from them that we were going to officially do that. And to cycle back to, you were talking about Simon Sinek and Start With Why. That was what clinched it, actually. We were having a strategic planning meeting at the Corner here in town, and I'd kind of queued up some TED Talks, some things to just kind of get ideas percolating between the three of us. And one of them was that video, and they watched it, and then it wasn't even really my goal. I don't know, maybe subconsciously it was, but all of a sudden the conversation turned to this idea of two pharmacy and health for you, health for another, and we decided before we left that room that day that we were going to do it. And now it's been over 5 years that we've been operating with that model, and I'd have to go back and look. I think we're at about $350,000 donated to various causes locally and internationally. So the dollars are great, but Marnie, that works with us, just put together a presentation of kind of quotes of all the organizations we worked with last year and the impact we were able to make, and those micro stories, I'd say, are what really hits home for me, that you're really touching one specific person's life in one specific way, and I don't know, to me that's the purpose for all of us. But
Wow, that is, it comes in all different shapes and forms, like you said, but in your case, it's actually in the form of a business that makes that part of its dual bottom line or triple bottom line, like you said. I'm curious, for anybody who's actually a business owner in the room, each of us, like you said, each of us will have our own values around how to give back, being grateful and gratitude. You found a way that you've baked right into the business kind of operation. I'm curious if we could even just spend a couple minutes, and even just kind of like that Tom's book that you got that spelled out a little bit of a blueprint. Maybe give us a few of the kind of the nuts and bolts of what does it look like in the business framework? Like, how does this thing play out? How do you decide how much to give? What's the bet, or what's the value exchange, even some of that idea?
Yeah, I think we came to giving from a unique perspective, that we weren't putting that in from day one. So we had budgets and things to work off of. We knew what we were able to give. How we kind of essentially classify it is, we look at what we give essentially as marketing dollars. So we don't really spend a ton in traditional marketing mediums. Like we don't really do a lot on social media in terms of paid advertising. We don't really do a ton in the newspaper, or with Cochrane now we certainly do a little, but we look at those kind of investments we're making in our community as our marketing dollars. So how we do it is we take 1% of all sales through the till, which kind of comes from Patagonia and Yvon Chouinard. He started 1% for the planet. So just a way of taking a certain percentage of sales so that every transaction you're doing is making some form of impact greater than that transaction itself. That's how we went about it.
So the notion of, in a traditional business where you've got an income statement, and I won't dive, I don't want to put you all to sleep for those of you who don't love accounting, but on the income statement you've got, money in and money out, and there is a marketing line item, for example, and so essentially, this is probably oversimplification, but you're taking some of what would be in a marketing expense and you're just moving that down to your donation expense. And the bet that you're making is those who resonate with your business or what you're doing, not just in what products you carry. Obviously, you have a following, because of some of that, but people can also follow you as a business based on this other activity, and then that will draw more people into your store that resonate with you as a business.
Yeah, that's the hope, and I think we've continued to grow through some turbulence like the rest of the world has seen over the last few years. I think one of our biggest fears was always, what if the PCN clinic that's next door to us closes? Then what? And we always kind of thought that was like the big scary thing, that we could never let that happen. And then it happened. And we kind of thought, well, this is going to be the true test of kind of customer loyalty and the inroads that we're making in the community. And we've just continued to grow. Like there wasn't even like a minor decline or a bit of a slowdown. We've just continued to grow, which I think, I don't know, maybe I'm an optimist, but I think that speaks to people understanding what we're doing and believing in what we're doing and wanting to be a part of what we're doing.
In the pharmacy industry, is well established. I'm sure if you were to go to school and study, as a pharmacist, part of that training is business training to open and run your own pharmacy. So what you're doing is essentially innovating within a fairly well-established traditional global industry. And so, for somebody, again, who's running a business that has to make, it has to be profitable, otherwise why would we be in business? What are some of the things that you're doing, from a measurement, like I'm a lean, continuous improvement, black belt background, everything has to be measured, value has to be measured, that's that corporate lens. So from a business lens, devil's advocate a bit, it's nice to hope and it's nice to care for the community, but how are you trying to measure whether you're getting anything back? And again, that might prickle a few people, even just ask, again, that's a devil's advocate question to poke at. How are you trying to validate whether it's valuable to you as a business to do this kind of thing?
In terms of just dollars, like I think there's social value, I think there's goodwill value with customers and with our staff as well. In terms of actual dollars in and out, we do a couple things to sort of track the impact. So the first is that we really want partnerships with the organizations we're working with. We don't want to just send an email and we don't really talk to them and then we hand them a check at the end and then that's all. We want kind of a two-way relationship. So we give the organizations we work with a coupon code so that they can share it with their followers. They get a discount for doing so. And then we also get to see how many of their followers are supporting us in that manner. So yeah, we do a few things like that. I think a part of it is sort of gut feel too, but we do daily, weekly, quarterly, monthly reports in all sorts of departments. So we definitely try and keep a pulse on the numbers. And the difficult part is always attribution, what is leading to what result. But
yeah, cause and effect. How do you try and pinpoint that? Just a moment. That question just escaped me. Systemizing. So how do you manage? So you've talked a little bit about the 1%. This is how we decide how much to give and et cetera. But again, from my corporate background, if you can systemize things so that you remove the administrative task and effort to do these kinds of things, how are you tackling that piece for maybe for a business that might be considering, we want to be more intentional or create a more kind of consistent process or workflow? What does that look like for the incoming? How do you decide? How do you get organizations applying? What does that piece look like?
I think because we're still relatively new to be doing it, but a lot of it is word of mouth, or I always just kind of keep my ear to the ground of when I go to events, I see who benefactors are or who's involved in those events, and I'll kind of keep a running list of organizations I'd like to work with. And then we also have a spot on our website where organizations can go and apply. So they click on Health for Another on our website. It kind of tells the story of our Community Roots program. It kind of lists who we've worked with in the past year. And then there's a spot for organizations to tell us their story, and then they get added to our queue. And so we don't have a formal criteria. I think hopefully one day we get to the point where we have so many groups asking us that we have to develop some sort of criteria. But now the kind of intake is at pace with picking a new one each month. So
yeah, and I guess that's a good example of it doesn't have to be so rigid, but it just has to have enough flow so that you have some choices to make each month, basically, for the size and magnitude that you're at currently.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. One of the other things that struck me, the topic for tonight is primarily around business and social impact, and can they coexist? And I think the obvious answer is yes, they can, and it's up to each business in our community if that resonates with them and how it's personalized for them. But the other thing that also relates to Innovate Cochrane that I was quite struck by, it's in the same spirit of, it's not necessarily giving to the nonprofit sector. It's actually the relationship between existing businesses and startup businesses. And that will likely be a deeper dive, two stools series, next session or a subsequent session. But I know, because we've got Two Pharmacy and Reid sitting here tonight, I know that that's also part of your story, not just your Community Roots program, but the work you've done to try and give lift to other businesses. So maybe give a bit of the backdrop of how did that come to be and what does that look like?
Yeah, this came up in conversation with Nathan when we first had a chat, 6 weeks ago or so. I'm trying to think as to what truly precipitated this. We're always looking for ways to be different or to fill a different niche in town. So I think that's how the business kind of came to be where it is today, where we're doing prescription compounding and sports medicine and home health care, and we have a health food store. Like it's kind of the things that we look around and we see are lacking elsewhere, and we try and incorporate that to what we're doing. When it comes to pharmacy, it's large. Well, there has been some independence popping up recently, which is a good thing, but it's largely corporate driven. So if like a young artisan wants to start their journey and try and sell through another business, there's not exactly a great mechanism to do so. That's improving too, like just up the road here. Well, I know Julia does it here, and then just up the road there's the Social Spot who's doing it too. But we kind of thought, how can we kind of take our customer flow and the traffic that we have and have that be helpful to other businesses in our community? So the idea was kind of like to reach out to farmers market vendors or kind of any local person that's at craft markets, that kind of thing, and see if they would be interested in selling through our store. So it's a way to kind of, for them to practice, to test that out, to see what it's like to wholesale to some extent, to get UPC codes on their products, things like that, and kind of we learn through our relationship with them, they hopefully learn through their relationship with us, and hopefully we kind of develop this ecosystem where businesses in town are helping other businesses be successful versus like a competitive environment.
I'm curious actually, and I'll put this question out to the audience here. Reid has mentioned their Community Roots program. I think there's even a sandwich board that I saw on the corner driving by here the day before yesterday. How many of you are familiar with the Community Roots program at 2 Pharmacy? Okay, so about a third, okay. How, of those who did not know about it, without trying to pass the mic around and do a big feedback loop at this point in the evening, how many of you feel like that type of, and actually this is for everybody, how many of you feel like that type of approach by a local business would influence in some way your decision to spend your pharmacy dollars or soap or other things? Now I know that you're his mother-in-law, so that I might have to exclude these 3 people in the front row, but you can vote too, Shelley. It's all good. But show of hands, like, does that type of thing influence where you spend your money? Yes, if yes, raise hand. Okay. Right, so I think there is a notion that when you find a business that is doing business in a certain way, not just what they're selling, does impact. I resonate with them, I want them to succeed, I'm going to spend my money there. I think if I take it a step further, when I was the executive director at the Pregnancy Care Center, our organization was one of the benefactors, and so Reid and I stood opposite one of those big paper check things, I think, or maybe it was...
It was just a small check.
You just gave us a small check, but it was still a check, though. It was impressive. And that also impacted me as the leader of an organization that, and in the nonprofit space, that was a huge eye-opener for me on the challenges that many organizations face trying to fund the good work that they're doing and trying to innovate. And often we come up into those kind of leadership roles with our own history and our own experience, but there's often other ways of doing things that can get us, even more abundance, in our door that helps us achieve. Like, there's a lot of amazing things happening in our community in that nonprofit space. So, and I'm a lot more aware of it now than I was before. So, to have businesses that are intentionally aligning, I think it's absolutely fantastic. Again, that's in my humble opinion. I'll give you that on the carpet here. So, one of the other topics that came up in our chats recently was often the word innovation is tied to technology, tech startups, Google, like Facebook, etc. You're a pharmacy. You're a lot of things. So to call you just a pharmacy is probably a bit of a slap in the face. But you're in the pharmacy space. And even the early conversations around our innovation center downtown, and the conversation around potentially having some tech startup kind of focus there. Like, as a local business, what's your take on the word innovation as it relates to technology?
I think in this day and age, everyone's chasing like the next Silicon Valley sort of thing. Like anytime you open a magazine or Twitter or whatever it may be, there's talk of like Miami's the next Silicon Valley, or Calgary's striving to be the next Silicon Valley. We're drawing these startups, which I think is good, but innovation goes way beyond just technology. I was saying to Nathan that I don't think in this day and age any business is excluded from being a tech company. If you don't have technology in this day and age, you probably are struggling to be a company that's existing. So I feel like we're all tech companies to varying degrees. One thing that I mentioned to Nathan, like I saw that the town built the station, and they're talking about putting kind of a startup incubator and some sports in there, which I think is an awesome thing. But I also think, from what I've read from the town, there's a bit of a narrow mindset that they're looking to support tech startups. They are basing their plan, from what I read, off of what Waterloo did. To me, there's a huge difference between Cochrane and Waterloo in that we don't have a huge university here that's cranking out constant tech talent. But we have a wealth of talent and experience in all sorts of other fields. Mm-hmm. And so maybe we need to broaden that scope and look at how can we build the next Found bookstore, or the next Two Pharmacy, or the next Four Eyes, yes, or Garmin, or whatever it may be. Mm-hmm. But I think it needs to go way beyond just tech. I think in order to have a healthy business ecosystem, it's not just technology. There needs to be companies that are exercising that technology and using that technology as well.
Mm-hmm. Great, I appreciate that. And I think, yeah, like you said, there's space for every business, whatever their focus is. And it might be more traditional. When I was at Four Eyes, obviously that was very tech heavy. And as a director with them. One other question I'm going to put to you now, and then we will open it up, and I'll invite you all to bring your questions forward as well. One of the things that we focus on in my corporate space when it comes to the topic of innovation, and there are others, actually, I'm going to call out Shannon Phillips, who's in the back corner. He's with a new company called Unbounded Thinking. They are one of the actors, for example, in the Calgary innovation ecosystem. That is building momentum, to Reid's point, that focuses on innovation capacity building. What does that look like? How do you formalize that kind of activity, recognizing that it's the humans in each of our organizations that will be the secret sauce or the strategic advantage? So when I think about innovation, or even what you guys are doing at Two Pharmacy, my question to you is around the impact on your people. So we've talked about the impact on others outside of your four walls. But what have you found the impact to be on your own staff, knowing that this is, when somebody hires on at Two Pharmacy, I presume it's fairly clear that this is part of your DNA, this is what we're about. Like, what have you found that impact to be? Or we could just ask Marty or somebody. You have other staff here too tonight. I could probably put them on the spot, but go ahead.
To get ready for this, I kind of wanted to watch a few of my favorite sort of TED Talks or things that helped kind of lead me to where I am. So I rewatched one of those today, which was a TED Talk that was actually done in Calgary by Bart Houlihan, who was one of the founders of the B Corp movement. And prior to that, he was a founder of the And One basketball shoe company. And he gives all sorts of statistics about kind of millennials and the younger generations and them wanting impact and purpose to be involved in their work. So I won't quote a whole bunch of numbers like he does, but if anyone's interested in that TED Talk, just Google Bart Houlihan TED Calgary and you'll find it. For us, I think it's at its core, it's a way to bring like-minded people towards us, so that we're all kind of similar. We come from a similar mindset. We want to help. We want to care for people. And being in the healthcare industry, I think that that's very important. We want people that want far more than a paycheck. They want a purpose, and they want to be a part of our shared purpose. As a retention tool, I think it's been huge that we have very little turnover. We still have now just one person working that started with my dad up the road in 1989. But we have all sorts of people, 10 plus years, and I think that speaks to them still believing in our purpose and wanting to be a part of that. So, I think I'm very proud of the staff that we have there and the impact that they're making. And they all get to choose whether they work for us or work for Shoppers or work in a completely different industry. And so I'm I don't know, humbled every day that they all believe in what we believe in, and we all get to do that together.
That's a great story.
Can I add something? Sorry, super selfish.
Absolutely. Here we go. Ronnie, go ahead.
Not selfishly. Like, I remember in my job interview, you asked me, like, what are the causes that you believe in? And I think I was kind of like shocked, like, oh my gosh, like, this is not a regular job interview question. But it was really impactful for me. And I know that you take what we say in that job interview and, like, you know, what's a local cause that you believe in? It's like, oh, Humane Society. Well, we're going to donate to them. Like, that's going to be one of the causes that we talk about. So that's also, you know, don't forget about these things, Reid.
Yeah, and that's a question that I always do ask is, I say, what is a cause that's near and dear to your heart that you believe in or support in some way? And that a part of why I ask that, yes, is to get ideas for groups that we're going to work with. It's also to suss out, is there alignment with that person? Like, are they the type of person that seeks to give and seeks to help? So it kind of serves a dual purpose there.
Yeah, that's an interesting insight. One of the, again, wearing my corporate hat for a minute, when we talk about, you know, bottom line impact to business, the cost of turnover and the operational cost when you have to retrain a role and somebody walks out the door with 10 or 15 years of knowledge, there's a real cost to that. And when I think about, you know, being in the corporate world, in a small organization or a large organization, you're competing against others, you're competing for talent, you're competing for people. The people layer of our business and frankly, any organization is the critical layer. And so to be intentional, it takes an extra 30 seconds or 3 minutes in an interview to ask a question like that. But to be intentional with questions like that or behavior like that, I think like those are investments that reap dividends in the long term, because they're thin layers of conversations or alignments that actually generate measurable impact in our organizations. And I think those are innovations. Those are new ways of thinking and challenging what we're doing. Those are prime examples, I think, of it. You know, again, it doesn't have to be somebody developing an app. Although if you're developing an app and you've got people that want to work together and come together every morning because of a broader purpose, I think I think there's a measurable value there, regardless of the business. Yeah. Do you have anything else kind of deeply insightful that I haven't asked you that you're just dying to share before we open up to others to ask questions?
I'd imagine some stuff will come out in questions. One that I've kind of been thinking about lots over the last week is sort of get ready for this. Sort of like a chicken and egg question that's always rolling in my head, which is, do we give because we're successful, or are we successful because we give? And through kind of the years of running this experiment, I don't know that I necessarily have a decisive answer on that. I think we are successful and we do give, so somewhere those coexist. The way I view it from my perspective is I really think it's like a symbiotic relationship, that the one is feeding the other continually, and that's how we can kind of weather the storm of COVID and the big medical clinic closing next to us. It's those two things are kind of working in tandem and feeding off of one another.
Great. No, that's a great additional comment. Thanks, Reid. All right. I'm going to actually pause, and I'm going to call out another innovation that's happening here tonight. We're speaking on these microphones for the benefit of those of you who came this evening. We're using, I'm not going to whack it because it'll reverberate on the video, but we have two individuals in the back of the room that are actually running cameras this evening, and I fully recognize now in saying that out loud that I didn't actually ask any of your approval to video. We started the videoing actually once everybody was facing this way, so at a minimum, if you didn't comb your hair, I'm sorry. They won't know who you are, frankly. I'm going to call out Mr. Derek Cooper and Miss Sophia Klassen. One of those two individuals is directly related to my wife and I, who's in the front row. So Sophia is our daughter in grade 10. She's at Cochrane High School. She is in a program called Creator Studio, which I believe is in its second year of existence. And that's also an innovation. That's also an experiment that a teacher at the high school here in town brought some of his previous experience, and I presume similar to what you did with your dad, pitched an idea to say this is a program that has value, and Rocky View Schools gave him some latitude. I'm speaking in the third person, even though Derek's right in the back here. So last year when we had, our early footing as Innovate Cochrane as a new nonprofit in the community, I needed some video work done. I knew Sophie was in grade 9 in Mr. Cooper's class. And so I asked if she had a way to connect with him and maybe if we could use some of their equipment. And so then he basically stepped out and said, I don't typically release equipment to grade 9 kids, and your semester training on that equipment is later. But he took the time to meet with her one-on-one, provided her the equipment, and we did a community talk half a year ago with Sophia running the camera, and then that footage became one of her assignments to actually edit it, and she learned and practiced on that. So he met a need for us. He provided us equipment and training. Sophia had a need to learn, and she had a need for a grade, and so we provided her an opportunity to do that. And then Derek in his program, he brought those two pieces together. So those are 3 needs that we just basically put on the table together, and they became the fulfillment of a different need in the triangle by just putting the needs on the table. Derek is here this evening, and Derek, I really appreciate you being here, and you're offering your equipment again, and one of your students is here with you as well. There's an opportunity for non-conventional or unconventional connections in our community, and just literally putting needs on the table without adding any more resource, although that's great too. We can actually meet needs in our community. So I just wanted to use that as a live example, and also to say thank you to you guys. I recognize I also didn't introduce our board. From Innovate Cochrane, you folks are here too this evening. Sam, Mark, I think Shane had to bow out, and Kim is here greeting and waving and giving you name tags with puzzle pieces on them. All right, we're going to change gears a little bit. You've been listening a lot to Reid and myself talking about the way their business has chosen to overlap succeeding as a business, paying their staff, paying their owners, keeping their lights on, and impacting the community. Are there any questions from the audience for Reid relating to their experience at 2 Pharmacy? What we'll do is, if you do have a question, I'll get you to lob it out, and then I'll speak it back through the microphone, and then we'll have Reid answer it. Does anybody have a hand up? I can just start calling people out. That would be awkward. We won't do that. We will not do that this evening. Chuck.
Reid, what do you think makes your particular business different from other competitors in town? What do you do differently?
So Chuck asks, what do you do differently than your other competitors in town? What differentiates 2 Pharmacy?
I think I somewhat alluded to that earlier, of us trying to find niches that we can kind of fulfill within the town. In terms of the giving side of things, I think that's the biggest thing that sets us apart from the huge number of pharmacies. I actually just counted it the other day. I think there's 12 other pharmacies in Cochrane now. So I look around, and if I go through the checkout at Shoppers as an example, they'll say, like, would you like to donate $2 to this? Which is good. They're trying to utilize their population and their following to do some social good. I don't want to be a jerk and put a cashier on the spot, but what I would like to ask back is, well, Shoppers going to donate $2? Are they going to put their neck out and support our community? So I think that's the biggest thing that really sets us apart. To go back to that TED Talk from Bart Houlihan from B Corp, he finishes it by saying the goal should be to be the best for the world, not the best in the world. And I think that's what we try and do, is we try and be the best for Cochrane and not the best in Cochrane. We don't need to beat our competitors, we need to beat their impact on our community.
I like that. That's quotable, and we will pull that out from this evening's transcript. I like that. All right. One of the other, it's funny because part of my, call it, I don't know, maybe it's under that courage seed, but I often will just step out and try things. And I've had to build up the capacity to do that. I was not always like that as a human being. But one of the things I did was I reached out to Reid, and that's partly how we ended up in conversation. But the other thing I did was I asked my daughter Sophia to do the same thing and reach out to her teacher, and that's how that conversation started. The other thing, though, was if I put those 2 steps independent of each other into the same context, when I was chatting with Reid the other day, I mentioned to him that it was possible that we were going to have some video capabilities here on site tonight, and that it was in connection with one of the teachers at the high school, etc. And then you had said something regarding the Kimmett Cup event that you host every year. And what was the correlation there?
Yeah, so outside of 2 Pharmacy, my family started a foundation called the Lindsay Lee Kimmett Memorial Foundation. We hold 2 large fundraisers every year. The next one coming up is the Kimmett Cup, February 10th and 11th, so coming up fairly soon. But over the years, we've kind of developed these relationships with photographers and videographers where we'll get them to create a video that day, and then at our banquet that evening, we show that video, and then afterwards we put it on social channels and kind of spread it far and wide, and that becomes a powerful way for us to tell our story. And so you can only kind of go to the well so many times with professional videographers and say like, hey, you want to do it for free again this year? And so I've long kind of had this idea of like, well, maybe we need to reach out to, I don't know, perhaps this is going to like show when I went to Cochrane High, but it used to be called multimedia, like to those teachers. And what did you say it's called now?
Creator Studio.
That sounds way cooler. Reach out to a teacher like that, and it becomes a way for their students to take on projects and create value and good in their community, and also develop their skill set. And then Nathan was like explaining that very idea that has just sat in my head for multiple years is actually happening, and that's innovation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's exciting. And so I haven't actually, well, I think you guys got introduced when we were doing sound check, but there's an opportunity then to carry on conversations like that by just building new connections in the community to see what can happen, from that. So I think there's tons of potential. I love what Derek's doing with his kids and investing in them at the high school. And frankly, again, if I think back to when I was a executive director of a nonprofit, your money that comes in is fairly finite, and the expense line items are all, again, delineated on your operating in and outs. What if there were people in our community that wanted to give of their time or their knowledge or their skills and just didn't have a way or didn't know what the needs were that they could actually apply that to? I think part of my background is both corporate innovation and tech, but it's also community innovation. And I think that's, again, this is just, we'll keep drawing on this one example to put skin on an idea. But I think there are ways for us to systemize connecting needs and resources in ways that are outside of maybe the traditional volunteer opportunities that exist in our community, and those need to be filled as well. So again, not to differentiate one better than the other, but I think these are ways that we can innovate. And I think Cochrane, frankly, we've been here 7 years. We love this community. It is a giving community. It has very cool businesses like Found, like 2 Pharmacy in it, but there's even more that we can do. And I think build out some, use our community almost like a sandbox and actually do some things at a community level and then learn from it. And then for me, it would be very awesome for us to then share that out to other communities, say, look what we've been able to do at a community level in Cochrane. Here's a blueprint, or here's some ideas, and share our value even further. I think that's well in our grasp to do that in this community, because I think we have the right ingredients to do that. So I'll get off my soapbox now. Any other questions or comments even? Some thoughts maybe that this has triggered, whether it relates to your own business or organization? Anything that comes to mind? Go ahead, Susan.
I just wanted to say I love the work that you do with seniors in the community. Great customer service, discount for those of us that are over 65. I just wondered what you've learned working with seniors in the community.
So the question is around what have you learned in working with seniors in the community, and a shout out to your customer service to that population.
I think that we kind of have 2 main demographics that we deal with at this store. When it comes to the prescription, the pharmacy side, the largest drivers of that is seniors. So that's a very important customer base to us. What we've learned from them, I don't know. That's difficult to quantify. I'd say that essentially, I think all our wisdom comes from those that have walked before us. So I think that the seniors that choose us and that we get to support, they're who planted seeds of ideas with my dad in 1989 that led the business to what it is today, and who come in and share with us on a daily basis, and that kind of transforms us. I think one of the most gratifying relationships I get to see at the store is we often hire high school students to do deliveries. The population that needs deliveries the most is seniors. And like occasionally one of the students will be sick or something like that, so I'll fill in and I'll show up to their door, and then they'll be kind of sad that it's me, and then they'll say like, "Oh, how's Max? Is Max doing okay? I miss him. I please pass my thanks on to him." And that kind of relationship between old and young, and I think that wisdom transfer from that customer to that young impressionable person is something that we see and makes an impact on us as well.
Well, that's a great side benefit or additional impact, community level impact, is relationships that happen because of transactions. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, like you were talking about, I don't know, the way I view it is like collisions of ideas and people. I think that a business can serve as a way to create collisions, and in that sense, we're creating these collisions between our customers and our staff on a daily basis, and I think there's always something to be said of the kind of value transfer, the knowledge transfer that's happening there.
One of the things that struck me the other day was I'm in relationship with a new business that just started up. It's not a startup, a tech startup working out of their garage, but it's somebody who invested their savings into starting a new business from scratch in our community. And that, for any of you who've done that, that's a fairly fragile or vulnerable season when you're trying to make every right decision and keep yourself afloat. You're watching your ins and outs. And so if you were a business owner, for example, in that kind of chapter, and you're probably thinking, well, I can't just give 1% away. How can I attract people to my business when that model doesn't work in my business? And so I think what struck me with that particular business is that I saw on their social media, I followed them, and I watched, and it was actually during right around the Truth and Reconciliation Day, September 30th. And what they had done was they had opened up their space. They're a clothing store, but they had opened up their space for a social gathering, a community gathering, to invite Truth and Reconciliation, to make space for that. And our family purchasing habits don't align with that store, but that for me was deeply resonant because I saw, they're not giving monetarily necessarily, and maybe that's not in their wheelhouse currently, but they're giving. They're giving of their space. They're giving of their social media even. So there are a lot of different ways that we can give. It's not just monetary. We're focusing on 1% and we're talking about income statements and things, but there are a lot of different ways to frame what value do each of us hold in our hands individually and as an organization, and what are we doing with that? One of the stories, from my upbringing was Old Testament. It was Moses, and he ran away from Egypt. He was herding sheep. And then God calls him to go back to Egypt and save people, like release people from their suffering. And he basically says, I'm disqualified, I can't do it, I don't have anything. And then in that story, God says, well, what do you have in your hand? And he says, all I have is the shepherd's staff. And then God basically says, well, just use that. Go and, the story's bigger than you anyway, so just go and play your part. And all he had to do was answer the question, what does he have in his hands? I think that story is kind of applicable to all of us organizationally and individually. That's an invitation for us to look through different eyes on evaluating what do we have. Often our society, our culture is, I don't have enough, or I can't. But often by just reframing the question of, well, what do I have, opens up a conversation, even an internal dialogue on something that can be done. And it can happen in any size of organization, I think, has been my experience.
Yeah, that kind of triggered a memory of our initial conversation. I saw a speech last year that really resonated with me where the person said there's 3 ways to give. You can give of your money, you can give of your time, or you can give of your voice in terms of to a cause. And I think at the pharmacy, a lot of this community roots and health for you, health for another is built around that money side of things. So once I heard that kind of reframed my way of thinking of like, well, are there other ways that perhaps even more impactful that we can be giving? So Marnie, her role with us is the storyteller. And so that's one thing we've started this year is we reach out to these organizations we're working with, and we create a video for them, and then we share that through our social media channels so that we are using our voice to propel their story and their cause. and yeah, time would be the other one. I worked at an investment bank in Vancouver at a while back, and I remember one day they told us that we could volunteer to clean up this community garden, and we would get paid for the day, and we'd get to be outside all day. And I thought, wow, that sounds awesome, sign me up. And only 2 or 3 other people signed up from the company, which I didn't understand why people wouldn't want to get paid to be outside all day. But I think that a program like that is something that we need to look at implementing in the future too, as ways to encourage our team to be giving of their time. So yeah, to kind of what you were saying, if you're a startup, you may not have the financial resources, like you're struggling to make ends meet as it is, so you may not be able to give financially, but there's other ways that you can give and other ways that you can make an impact. And I would make the argument that those type of things are only going to serve your business in a positive light, because you're going to create a bond with people, with potential customers, in a way that even the financial couldn't do.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's a good example. When I was working for Ernst & Young with one of the accounting firms once upon a time, and we were living in Winnipeg at the time, and any of you who lived in Winnipeg in the spring, when the river ice starts to break up, it doesn't all just flow away. Sometimes it backs up. And it often, north of Winnipeg, it would cause giant ice dams and flooding. And so the same thing, they gave us a day to basically go and fill sandbags at one of the little municipal offices to then go and be transported to these people's homes and literally build sandbag walls around their properties. And so a buddy of mine and I, same thing, it's a free day, or it's a paid day, let's go and work. And there were actually quite a few people, but they, as a corporation, they did spend a lot of time prioritizing giving back. And so I think, yeah, it does make sense to.
Yeah, and I think on a company-wide level, you have to make space for that too, where like in doing so, you don't feel like you're leaving your teammates shorthanded or that kind of thing.
Right,
But
right.
it goes beyond just like, yeah, take the day and we'll pay you for it. I think there needs to be support in the workplace as well to make that a comfortable situation.
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah, so that it benefits, it's a virtuous cycle there, it benefits all.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions? I have one more question, but yeah, go ahead.
Reid, have you ever thought of writing a book
Have you ever thought of writing a book, Reid?
about what we're talking about?
Right. About what we're talking about.
Or have I just given you planted the seed?
There's another seed, another innovation seed.
No, I can't say I've given too much thought to writing a book before. To be completely honest, that 50-some people care enough to take 2 hours out of their evening to come hear what I think is a surprise to me. So yeah, I don't know. I've never considered myself like a expert, or that I contain this profound knowledge or something that I need to get out to the world. So yeah, it hasn't crossed my mind too much, despite my name being Reid and write and a book. I feel like that should align in some way, but.
Wow, I didn't even put that together until you just said that. Any other questions or comments or ideas, things that kind of have come to mind tonight? We'll give you guys another opportunity. Yeah, go ahead.
I was unfamiliar with your community roots portal on your website, and I'm curious if, like, how long have you had that on your website, and did you notice a change in how it formalized some of your processes having that portal? Just speaking from a place where I don't have that portal.
Right. So raising the question around the portal itself, that functional piece on your website, and when you implemented that, did you notice any change when you formalized the process?
Yes, we put that on about 3 years ago now, when Marnie updated our website when she started with us. And yeah, I feel like it definitely helps to formalize things, because it gets us a way to get the information that we're seeking. And it's really not a lot we want. I think it's like name, email, phone number, and then like tell us your story is all it says. So we're not necessarily looking for a lot, but we're looking for a way to learn about these organizations, to create an initial contact, and then have a contact person to go to. Going back in time when we first started this, we worked with We Charity, which kind of had a precipitous fall from grace at the early stages of the pandemic. So we used to just pick projects through We Charity, some local school programs, some international projects. And then it was once we ran into difficulty that we transition to this community roots model of like, let's focus our dollars on making an impact right here with the people that are choosing to support us on a daily basis.
One of the thoughts that's come to my mind is you've been able to take initiative as a single company in the community, and you have your own format and system and program. I'm curious, and this is where I'm going to experiment a little bit. Frankly, everything tonight is an experiment. This is a series that we want to test and see if there's value and insights that can be applied to other organizations and other businesses. So this is also part of my experiment, or our experiment. Are there any other, let's frame this. So there are many different ways that this is happening in our community. It's not just 2 Pharmacy. Do you feel like there's value if something was done more consistently at a community level, where maybe there was like you've got an input point on your own website? Actually, I'll start with you, and then we'll invite other input as well. But is there increased value, or maybe just increased overhead and more effort and challenge for little return? But what's your thought on if there was an initiative broader than just 2 Pharmacy, where multiple companies had access to a pool of incoming organizations, and sure, everybody was free to give in whatever way they wanted, but to maybe make that more of a community level effort? Would that be beneficial to you as a business who's already started down that path?
I think it certainly could be, like going back to sort of making collisions. I think those collisions need to happen in some way. So if there's tools beyond just like happenstance, humans running into each other, I think that could definitely serve a purpose to kind of create an awareness of those in need and awareness with those that are looking to give or willing to give. It could certainly serve a purpose. I once knew of a company in Calgary, I think they ended up closing, but they were called Deliver Good, and they were creating sort of like a Kijiji, a 2-sided marketplace for offices, like companies that had something to give, like they were moving offices, they had all this furniture they didn't need anymore, or they had a fridge that they didn't need, whatever it could be. And then charitable organizations were on the other side of the marketplace, and they could go get those goods for free from them. It was called Deliver Good. So something like that I think has been dabbled with and experimented with before. And I think that the stars just need to kind of align. I think that there's definitely a possibility or an opportunity there.
I mean, how many of you are familiar with the free food sheds in the community? All right, that's obviously another live example. Helping Hands signed up for tonight. Helping Hands, there you are. So what's been your experience? This is, you're basically doing exactly this thing in that realm of food security and releasing food that's excess and meeting needs with it. I am actually going to, I said I wasn't going to do this, but would you be willing to just share a little bit of what that's been like for you and the success or the challenges maybe in that regard?
Sure.
One thing I'll add, I owe you an email too, and I'll announce it. You're our February Community Roots partner.
Thank you so much. Thank you, I didn't expect this. Helping Hands runs the 2 free food shed locations in Cochrane. So for those of you who don't know, there's a fridge, a freezer, and a pantry at 2 different locations downtown. And they're open 24 hours a day. They're entirely barrier-free. We don't ask any questions. If you're hungry, go get some food. If you have extra, you put in food. And it really is about reciprocity. It's about community giving. It's something that we hope Cochrane residents are all sharing responsibility for. So the program is almost entirely maintained by volunteers. The staff, of course, oversees it. We follow health and safety guidelines, all of that good stuff. But volunteers every day are rescuing food from local grocers, restaurants, etc., and repurposing food that might have left Cochrane or headed to landfill, and instead repurposing it to the sheds so it can reach hungry Cochranites. So we're rescuing to the tune of 6,000 kilograms of food a month, and the sheds are filled every single day, and the sheds are emptied every single day. So something we're super, super proud of. We certainly have challenges. We face hoarding. We face mental health issues. The sheds face abuse. The sheds face stolen property. But we try to handle it with as much generosity and as much grace as we can.
and recognize that none of those behaviors are coming from a place of malicious intent. At least we choose to believe that that's not what's happening. We choose to believe that it's often a case of someone who's misguided, someone who's faced poor times, bad times, and our volunteers show up every single day. They clean the sheds, they stock the sheds, and we move on.
Wow, okay,
Is there
thank you.
anything else?
I think, and I think when I first saw the sheds appear in the community, one of the reference points I think I saw was that this had been done in Calgary initially, and then this was a model then that it was brought into Cochrane and then made Cochrane, or
Right.
Cochraneized, I guess.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, these are popping up all over the world.
Okay.
It's a model that definitely we've learned from a global movement to offer these community pantries.
So it's a community pantry with food as the conduit is the free food shed, and the resource is food. But I think that's where, often in a traditional, and again, business, industries, well, we're a pharmacy happens this way. Well, you can take one of the, in going to, innovation engineering certifications in that corporate world, often what they'll do is they'll ask you to spend a bit of time in your business, and then they'll actually blindside you, in a healthy way, with a completely different industry. So, they put you in a table of 5 people and say, you're an airline and your customer service stinks. What would you do if Starbucks was allowed to come and repurpose your customer experience? What would happen? And so they start to intentionally bring collisions of very, different operating models, lenses, values, etc. We could arguably take that model and all of the good and the challenges, the learnings, especially that part, I would argue, and apply that to where else could that actually take root. We don't actually have to start from scratch. We can actually take what's already working and then just bring other voices to the table. I think that's absolutely fantastic, and the trades and others that help even make those physical sheds happen, and then those that are volunteering, it's fantastic. So yeah, great. And that wasn't a plug to say, hey, you should really tell her that. No, but that's awesome. But that's a great example right there.
My plan was to get caught up on some emails today, and then our daughter threw up this morning, and I didn't go to work. And I stayed home.
So that is awesome. That's a great story. I'm sorry about your daughter, but that's a great story.
Yeah, can kids fake puke? Because she was fine the whole day.
I don't know. You're the pharmacist.
Won't be lost.
All right. Thank you, Laura. I appreciate that I put you on the spot, but thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Those are great examples. All right. There's a hand in the back. Ozzy, do you want to share?
Yeah, just Reid, you have a unique perspective on this community, having been raised here and watched the rapid growth of an unusually fast-growing community. Why do you think it keeps a community feel?
In a fast-growing community like Cochrane, how do you think Cochrane is maintaining a community feel, having been here for as long as you have?
I think it's about human connection, I would say. I think for me this wouldn't necessarily involve the pharmacy, although I certainly see it in there too. But when I think back to my sister passing away in 2008, there were a core set of people that really cared for us and really cared how we were doing and were there to bring meals or help in any way possible. And as time's gone on, like next month will be 15 years, those people are still there. And so I think what gives Cochrane that community feel is that there's people who care about the community and who care about the other citizens of the community. And if we're 35,000 or 50,000 or a million like the city next to us, I think as long as there's opportunities for people to connect and a way for them to express their level of care for one another, that kind of community feeling will continue to be prevalent.
Thank you. All right, thanks, Ozzy, for the question. All right, any other questions, comments? Marnie,
More of a random one, but,
you're close, I'll give you the mic.
okay. What are like the things you're most excited for, and what are your biggest fears as a business owner right now?
So I'll just say while you're thinking about your answer, the fact that one of your staff felt safe enough to ask you, as the owner of the business, what are you most excited about and what are your greatest fears? That says something about the culture that you have created at 2 Pharmacy, at least from my perspective. So.
In terms of excitement, the thing I would say is that I think the healthcare system, as we see it, has a lot of challenges right now. I was at a meeting yesterday with the Cochrane and Area Health Foundation that's being formed to try and improve healthcare in Cochrane. And so, like, I don't know, it's hard to say you're excited about things that aren't going well, but I'm excited about the opportunity that lies to improve healthcare delivery in Cochrane, and kind of our possibility of kind of having a hand in that.
Mm-hmm.
What do I fear the most? I'd say, I kind of alluded to earlier that I think a lot of our success lies in the hands of our team and the people that choose to be a part of our team. And so my biggest fear would be things happening that take them away from work, if that's retirements, or if that's life events, if that's having to move to be with family or whatever it may be. I think I don't know, I'm sure Marnie is aware of this. I really genuinely care about all the people that work with us, and if the time came where those relationships were ending, that's the part that I'd say I'd maybe lose sleep over. That being said, I genuinely also want what's best for all of our staff. So if that means that they find a new passion or a new interest or something that's going to take their life in a different direction, I genuinely want them to go pursue that, because I would want my employer to do the same for me.
Mm-hmm. Good, thank you. Really appreciate that. Thanks, Marnie. Good questions. All right, we are at a time check of 8:30, or almost at 8:30. So that, and I recognize, again, as part of this first experiment, we've been broadcasting this as a 2-hour event, 7 till 9. We booked the space 7 till 9. And I think when I built the Eventbrite event, it was built as 7 to 8:30. So if it actually populated in your calendar, you might be wondering, is it over now? Is it over at 9? We have the space until 9 o'clock. We wanted to wrap up officially by around 8:30 or so that we had more time for those who want to stay to do more connecting. Like we've mentioned a lot about human connection and the importance of collisions. That is one of the fundamental pillars of Innovate Cochrane that we've seen the measurable value of already in the short time we've been in existence. And so we want to build that into each of our events. And so some of you were able to connect as you were coming in. For anybody who wishes to, we will be here until 9 o'clock. And you are welcome to stay and make even one more connection that you had before you walked in tonight. So that's something that is an invitation that's open to you now. I will say really briefly, from an Innovate Cochrane side, as we start 2023, we are starting to map out what are the other experiments to prove value that Innovate Cochrane can bring complementarily to other organizations like the Chamber and others. So as part of that, proving almost like as if, well, frankly, we are a startup, and we're also just like any business startup trying to figure out what's the product, what are the niche opportunities that aren't being met yet, and how can we meet those? So this is an example of that. We'll do more of these, and I would say the best conduit to be in touch with us would be our website. Using the Connect at Innovate Cochrane, you'll find a button on the website. If there are other community innovators that you are aware of, or if you are one, and again, no ego involved. If you feel like we've done something in our organization that, coming through COVID or whatever the chapter that you've come through, there's value in sharing our human experience with others, and it opens up our eyes, it challenges our perspectives on things. So definitely reach out to us through the website if you have others that you feel like would be a great voice and microphone. So I'll throw that invitation out there and challenge. We do also have a number of other events, and I'll quickly highlight a few of them. If you are a startup of any sort, and you're looking for some community, some encouragement, some insight, and some resource, we have Startup Cochrane, which happens, it's a monthly event under our Innovate Cochrane umbrella. primarily driven by Mark Eden, who is the founder of the Corner Co-working Space here in Cochrane and now in Okotoks. He's building his co-working empire beyond our borders. But Mark is with us. He's a Cochraneite. And so every the fourth Tuesday of every month, we have a Startup Cochrane event, typically at the Corner Co-working Space. You'll see something, hashtags on our social media, etc. So you're welcome to come out to that. We have 2 other events that are actually tied to an entity called Platform. Platform Calgary, I think now just Platform. But anyway, they're one of the large catalyst organizations in Calgary that is part of the innovation ecosystem that's been growing. They have a ton of insights, connections, and offerings, programs. So we're actually going to pilot 2 of those through Innovate Cochrane, extending the value of Platform out to Cochrane. And so January 23rd, January 30th, we'll put those dates up on the website. Basically, there's 2 entry-level trainings. One's called Startup 101 on January 23rd, and one is called Customer 101. So if you're looking for some new insights on how to take, even if you're not a startup in your history as a company, but want to just expose yourself to other insights that might actually challenge how you are running your business organization, those 2 offerings are nearly free. I think they're $10 per person. And so again, we'll have that information up on the website. Those are a few of the January offerings, and then we'll have more to come. There's more other experiments that are simmering on the stove, and we'll get those out to the community as well. So I think with that, we will formally wrap up this part where you get to stand up and stretch. We'll turn the cameras off at this point. Kim, what's that symbol?
I don't know if you can hear me from here, but I said to most people when they came in, turn the name tags over the heart, and the goal is to meet a friend. So if there's an opportunity for that, that would be fantastic.
Okay, you'll see that we intentionally, and not we, when I say we, I mean Kim, attached puzzle pieces to your name tags. Philosophically, that is a big piece of who we believe we can be in the community, is taking each of us who have unique sized puzzle pieces, because each of us are unique, and actually connecting us in unique ways with others. So feel free, if you have the time and the capacity, to hang around for a bit, and we'll connect with each other, and we'll see what happens as a result. So thank you all for being part of our first pilot of Community Innovators, this series, and more of these to come as we go forward. So thank you all. You're dismissed, or you're not, whatever you want.
Thank you.
Well done. Well done. That was good. Really good. Some nice kind of impromptu elements there too. That was great. So.
Yeah.